The stars had never been kind to humanity. When they first left Earth 300 years ago, they found a galaxy that was already full. Thousands of alien species had built their empires among the stars. They had their own laws, their own councils, and their own ways of doing things. Humans were newcomers. They were unwanted. But humanity did not complain. They found empty worlds on the edges of known space. They built their colonies. They grew their numbers. And when trouble came to the galaxy, they stood up to fight. The first great enemy was the Vecthari swarm. These creatures came from the darkness between galaxies. They were like insects, but each one was the size of a small ship. They did not talk. They did not negotiate. They only consumed. World after world fell to their hunger. The great alien empires sent their fleets, but they were not enough. Then human ships arrived at the Battle of Proxima Gate. The aliens had never seen humans fight before. They watched in shock as human captains flew their ships directly into swarm clusters. They saw human soldiers board hive ships with nothing but guns and courage. The battle lasted 9 days. When it ended, the swarm had been pushed back. 60,000 humans had died. The aliens said nothing. No thanks, no praise. They simply returned to their comfortable worlds and tried to forget. But the threats kept coming. Next came the null zones. These were areas of space where reality itself was breaking down. Ships that entered them never came out. Planets caught in their expansion simply stopped existing. The alien scientists studied the problem for decades but found no answer. Their mathematics was not advanced enough. Their physics could not explain what was happening. Human scientists worked on the problem in secret. They did not sleep for years. They pushed their minds to the breaking point. And finally, they found a way to build containment fields that could stop the null zones from spreading. They shared this technology freely with the galaxy. The aliens took it without a word of gratitude. Some even complained that the human designs were ugly. Then the harvesters woke up. These were ancient machines, built by a species that had died 1 billion years before. They had been sleeping in the cores of dead planets, waiting. When they woke, they began their original purpose, collecting organic life for experiments that no living mind could understand. Their ships were the size of moons. Their weapons could crack planets in half. The alien empires panicked. They had no weapons that could hurt the harvesters. They had no shields that could stop them. Once again, they looked to the edges of their space where the humans lived. Humanity answered the call. They always answered. The war against the harvesters lasted 40 years. Human soldiers learned to board the giant machines and destroy them from within. Human engineers found the frequency that could put the harvesters back to sleep. Human worlds were used as bait, drawing the machines away from alien planets. 47 human colonies were destroyed completely. 890 million humans died. When the war ended, humanity expected things to be different. They had saved the galaxy 3 times. They had given their blood, their worlds, and their children. Surely now the aliens would see them as equals. Surely now they would be welcomed into the great councils of the galaxy. They were wrong. The Galactic Concord was the ruling body of the galaxy. 4,000 species sent representatives to its great assembly. When humanity asked to join, the Concord laughed at them. Humans were too primitive, they said, too violent, too emotional. The Concord did not want warriors among them. They wanted civilized beings. Instead of membership, humanity received sanctions. The Concord banned human weapons research. They restricted human travel. They spread propaganda about human aggression. In their comfortable council chambers, alien diplomats joked about the attack apes, who were useful for fighting, but not much else. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was 112 years old. She had been born during the Harvester War. Her father had died pushing one of the great machines into a sun. Her mother had worked herself to death developing new shield technology. Elena had given her entire life to representing humanity among species that despised her. On the day everything changed, she stood before the full Concord assembly. Behind her, a holographic display showed the truth that the aliens had always ignored. Every human death, every destroyed colony, every sacrifice made for a galaxy that did not care. The Zethrani High Speaker looked down at her from his elevated platform. His species had skin like blue glass and eyes like drops of mercury. They were one of the founding races of the Concord. They had never fought in any war. They had never lost a single world. "Why do you show us this?" he asked. His translator made his voice sound bored. "Because you seem to have forgotten," Elena said. "We have protected you for 3 centuries. We have asked for nothing in return except respect. Basic respect. And you have given us nothing but contempt." The high speaker made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your kind breeds quickly. Your losses are acceptable. This is simply what you are good for." The chamber was silent. 4,000 species waited to see what the human would do. Many expected her to shout or threaten. Humans were emotional creatures after all. Elena smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally let go of hope. "Then you will no longer need to accept our losses," she said, "because there will be no more losses. We are leaving." She turned and walked toward the exit. Every human in the chamber followed her. Diplomats who had spent decades building relationships simply stood up and left. Military advisors who had shared intelligence for generations walked away without looking back. The aliens watched in confusion. This was not how things were supposed to go. The humans were supposed to accept their role. They were supposed to be grateful for the chance to serve. "You cannot leave," the high speaker called out. "Who will protect the border systems? Who will maintain the null zone containment?" Elena stopped at the door. She did not turn around. "That sounds like your problem now," she said. Within 1 week, every human ship had left conquered space. Every human station had been evacuated. Every human soldier, scientist, and diplomat had gone home. For the first time in 3 centuries, humanity closed its borders, and the galaxy in its arrogance barely noticed them go. 18 months passed after the humans left. In that time, the Galactic Concord continued its business as usual. Trade ships moved between worlds. Diplomats argued about small matters. The wealthy species enjoyed their comfortable lives. Most had already forgotten about the humans. They were just a minor species from the edge of the galaxy. Nothing important. Then the reports started coming in. The first problem appeared in Sector 7, near the old Harvester battlegrounds. A null zone containment field had failed. The field generators were human technology, built and maintained by human engineers. Without them, the machines had slowly broken down. Now the null zone was growing again. 3 mining stations had already disappeared. The Concord sent their own engineers to fix the problem. The best minds from a dozen species traveled to Sector 7. They studied the generators for weeks. They ran thousands of tests. They consulted ancient databases and modern computers. They understood nothing. The human technology was beyond them, not because it was more advanced, but because it was different. Humans thought in ways that aliens could not follow. Their solutions were creative, unexpected, and completely undocumented. The humans had never shared how their machines worked. They had only shared the machines themselves. "Contact the humans," the Concord ordered. "Demand that they send technical information." A message was sent to the border of human space. It was an order, not a request. The Concord expected immediate obedience. There was no reply. They sent another message, and another, and another. Each time the result was the same. Silence. Finally, a Concord diplomat ship was sent to the border itself. What they found there made them afraid for the first time. Human space was surrounded by a wall of automated defense platforms. Thousands of weapons pointed outward at any ship that approached. Each platform carried a simple recorded message that played on all frequencies. "You are not welcome here." The diplomat tried to explain that the Concord needed human help. The platform did not care. It was a machine. It had no sympathy. When the diplomat ship moved closer, warning shots were fired across its path. The ship retreated quickly. Back at the Concord assembly, panic began to spread. But it was a quiet panic. The leaders did not want their citizens to know how bad things really were. They held secret meetings and spoke in whispers. "The humans will come back," the Zethrani high speaker insisted. "They cannot ignore us forever. They need us." But as months passed, it became clear that humans did not need anyone. Inside their closed borders, humanity was thriving. They had always been forced to send their resources outward, to build weapons and ships for galactic defense. Now they kept everything for themselves. New cities rose on their worlds. New technologies were developed. Human children grew up without knowing war. Outside human space, things were getting worse. The Vekthari swarm had been quiet for decades. Human patrols had kept them contained in the outer reaches of the galaxy. Human weapons had taught them fear. But now there were no more patrols. There were no more weapons pointed at them. Scout ships reported that the swarm was massing in numbers never seen before. Billions of creatures gathered in the darkness, preparing for something big. Military experts calculated that the swarm would reach the outer colonies in 5 years, maybe less. We must build our own defenses, some voices in the Concord said. But this was easier said than done. Most alien species had not fought a real war in centuries. They had relied on humans for protection for so long that they had forgotten how to protect themselves. Their weapons were outdated. Their soldiers were untrained. Their ships were built for trade and comfort, not for battle. The Concord called an emergency session. Representatives from all 4,000 species gathered to discuss the crisis. For the first time in living memory, fear filled the great assembly hall. "We must convince the humans to return," said a delegate from the Orosian theocracy. "Whatever they want, we will give them." "They want respect," another delegate replied. "They want to be treated as equals. Can we give them that?" The question hung in the air. Many species still believed they were superior to humans. The idea of treating them as equals was uncomfortable. Some thought it was impossible. The Zethrani High Speaker made the decision. He would personally contact the humans and offer them membership in the Concord. It was a great honor, he told himself. The humans would surely accept. A transmission was sent. This time it was not an order, it was an offer, an invitation. After 3 days, a response finally came. A single human face appeared on the screens of the Concord Assembly. It was Ambassador Chen Wei, an older man with tired eyes and gray hair. "You told us our losses were acceptable," he said. His voice was calm. There was no anger in it. Somehow that made it worse. "You told us we were useful for dying. Well, we are tired of being useful." The High Speaker tried to speak, but Chen Wei continued. "The swarm is coming. The null zones are growing. The harvesters will wake again someday. These are your problems now. You wanted a galaxy without humans? You have it. Enjoy." "Wait," the High Speaker said. "We are offering you membership. Full membership in the Concord. Equal status with all species." Chen Wei laughed. It was a sad sound, not a happy one. 50 years ago, we would have given anything for that offer. 20 years ago, we would have considered it. Today, he shook his head. Today, you offer us equality only because you are afraid. Not because you believe we deserve it. Not because you respect us. Because you need us to save you again. "Please," the High Speaker said. The word tasted strange in his mouth. He had never said it to a human before. "Fear is not the same as respect," Chen Wei said. "When you learn the difference, perhaps we will talk again. Until then, acceptable losses are yours now. Goodbye." The screen went dark. The Concord sat in stunned silence. For the first time, they understood something terrible. The humans were not coming back. Not for money, not for honor, not for power. They had been broken by centuries of thankless service, and broken things do not simply heal because you need them to. Outside the great windows of the assembly hall, the stars looked cold and hostile. Somewhere out there, the swarm was waiting. Somewhere out there, reality itself was falling apart, and humanity, the only species that had ever stood against the darkness, had chosen to look away. 3 years after humanity closed its borders, the galaxy began to fall apart. It did not happen all at once. It happened slowly, piece by piece, like a building losing its bricks one by one. At first, nobody noticed. By the time they did, it was already too late. The null zones were the first disaster. Without human engineers to maintain the containment fields, they continued to expand. 17 star systems were swallowed in the first year alone. Billions of beings simply stopped existing. One moment they were there. The next moment, they were not. There was no warning. There was no escape. The Concord tried everything they could think of. They sent their best scientists to study the human technology. They offered massive rewards to anyone who could understand it. They even tried to build their own containment fields from scratch. Nothing worked. The human designs were based on physics that alien scientists did not understand. Humans had discovered things about the universe that they had never shared. They had kept their deepest knowledge to themselves, perhaps knowing that one day they would need something to bargain with. Or perhaps they had simply never been asked nicely. But the null zones were not the only problem. Throughout the galaxy, human-built systems began to fail. Communication relays that humans had installed went silent. Trade routes that human ships had protected became dangerous. Medical technologies that human researchers had invented stopped working when no one could repair them. The galaxy had never realized how much it depended on humanity. The humans had never asked for credit. They had simply done what needed to be done, quietly and without complaint. Now that they were gone, everyone could see the holes they had left behind. Worse still, the alien species began to turn on each other. For centuries, humanity had been a common enemy that united the Concord. When different species disagreed, they could always bond over their shared dislike of humans. Without that common enemy, old hatreds returned. The Kethvaran hegemony had always wanted to expand its territory. Now, without human peacekeepers to stop them, they invaded three neutral systems. The Erosion theocracy declared that machine intelligences were unholy abominations and began destroying them wherever they found them. The Methane Lords, ancient and powerful, withdrew from galactic politics entirely, caring nothing for the younger species. Small wars broke out everywhere. Trade collapsed. Alliances broke apart. The great civilization that had stood for 10,000 years was crumbling from within. And still, the Vectari swarm grew stronger. Reports came in every week from the outer systems. The swarm was moving, slowly at first, but then faster and faster. They had learned from their previous defeat. They had evolved. Their creatures were bigger now, more numerous, more organized. They moved like a single mind with 1 billion bodies. The first colony to fall was a small mining world called Sethra Prime. It had a population of 8 million. When the swarm arrived, the planetary defense forces lasted less than 6 hours. Distress calls were sent, but no help came. No help could come. Every species was too busy with its own problems. After Sethra Prime came others. Korvath Station, the moons of Helion, the agricultural worlds of the Vestry system. One by one, lights went out across the map of the galaxy. Refugee ships began to flee toward the core systems. Millions of beings packed into whatever vessels they could find, carrying nothing but hope and fear. They left behind everything they had known, their homes, their families, their histories, all consumed by the endless hunger of the swarm. Some refugees tried to reach human space. They had heard rumors that humans were still alive behind their closed borders. They had heard that human worlds were peaceful and safe. Desperate beings will believe anything that offers hope. When they reached the border, they found the same wall of automated platforms, the same recorded message played on repeat. "You are not welcome here. Please," the refugees begged. "We have nowhere else to go. Our worlds are gone. Our people are dying." The platforms did not answer. They were machines. They had no hearts to break. Some refugees tried to force their way through. Their ships were destroyed without hesitation. The debris floated in space, a warning to others who might try the same thing. Those who survived turned back. They had no choice. They returned to a galaxy that was dying around them. Inside human space, life continued as if nothing was wrong. Children played in parks on green worlds that had never known war. Scientists explored new ideas without worrying about military applications. Artists created beautiful things for no reason other than beauty. Humanity had finally found peace, but not everyone was at peace. Admiral Yuki Tanaka was one of the oldest humans still alive. She had been a young officer during the Harvester War. She had watched her friends die by the thousands. She had ordered attacks that she knew would kill her own people. She had done it all for a galaxy that never thanked her. Now she sat in her home on the shores of a quiet ocean. She watched the waves and tried to forget. But forgetting was impossible. Every night she dreamed of the stars. She dreamed of the battles she had fought. She dreamed of the aliens she had saved. And sometimes she dreamed of the refugees dying at the border, turned away by machines that followed orders she had helped write. "We did the right thing," her husband told her. "They treated us like animals. They deserve what is happening to them." Tanaka nodded. She knew he was right. But knowing something and believing it were two different things. She wondered if the aliens understood yet. She wondered if they had realized what they had lost. Not just human ships and human guns, but something more important. Something they had never appreciated. Humanity had not just protected the galaxy because they were strong. They had protected it because they believed it was worth protecting. They had looked at the stars and seen beauty. They had looked at alien species and seen potential friends. They had believed, in spite of everything, that the universe could be a better place. That belief was gone now. The galaxy had killed it with 1,000 small cruelties, 1,000,000 tiny insults. And without that belief, there was nothing left to fight for. Outside the walls of human space, the darkness continued to spread. The swarm consumed world after world. The null zones grew larger. The ancient harvesters began to stir in their tombs. And somewhere, in the cold spaces between stars, the last survivors of a dying civilization wondered if anyone would remember them when they were gone. 5 years after humanity left, the Vecthari swarm reached the core systems. The core was where the oldest and most powerful species lived. They had built their civilizations there when humanity was still living in caves on a small blue planet. They had towers of crystal that touched the clouds. They had cities that floated in the skies. They had art and music and philosophy that they believed was the finest in the universe. None of it mattered to the swarm. The Zethrani homeworld was the first to fall. This was the world of the High Speaker, the being who had called human losses acceptable. His people had ruled the Concord for 6,000 years. They had never known fear. They had never needed to fight. When the swarm darkened their skies, they realized too late that they had forgotten how. Their defense fleet was modern and beautiful. It had been built for parades and ceremonies, not for war. When the first wave of swarm creatures hit them, their ships broke like glass. The second wave reached the planet's surface. The last transmission from the Zethrani homeworld was the High Speaker himself. His translator was broken, so his words came out as raw sounds. But anyone watching could understand the meaning. He was screaming. After the Zethrani fell, the other core species began to panic. The methane lords sealed themselves inside their fortress moons. They had enough supplies to last 1,000 years. They did not care what happened to anyone else. The Erosian theocracy prayed to their gods for salvation. Their gods did not answer. What remained of the Galactic Concord came together one last time. It was not a meeting of the powerful anymore. The powerful were dead or hiding. It was a meeting of the desperate. "There is only one hope," said a delegate whose homeworld had already been consumed. "We must go to the humans. We must beg." "They have already refused us," another delegate replied. "They will not change their minds. Then we will show them something they have never seen before. We will show them that we have changed." It was a desperate plan, but desperate plans were all they had left. 12,000 ships gathered at the human border. It was the largest fleet the Concord had ever assembled. But these ships were not armed for battle. Their weapons were powered down. Their shields were turned off. They came in the ancient formation of surrender, a pattern that had not been used in 10,000 years. They came not as an army, but as beggars. The automated defense platforms detected them immediately. Weapons powered up, targeting systems locked on. One word from the human commanders would destroy them all. But the word did not come. Instead, the platforms moved aside. A path opened through the wall of weapons. And from human space, a single small ship emerged. It was nothing special to look at. No weapons, no armor. Just a simple transport vessel, the kind that might carry cargo or passengers between worlds. But every being in the Concord fleet knew what it meant. The humans were willing to talk. Admiral Yuki Tanaka appeared on every screen. She was old now, older than she had been during the wars. Her hair was completely gray. Her face was lined with years of hard living, but her eyes were still sharp. "Why are you here?" she asked. The replies came from everywhere at once. 1,000 voices speaking 1,000 languages, all translated into a single stream of desperation. "Please help us. We are dying. The swarm has taken everything. We have lost our homes, our families, our worlds. We have nothing left but these ships and our lives. Please, please, we will give you anything." Tanaka listened in silence. Her face showed no emotion. "Anything? she repeated. You will give us anything? Yes, the voices answered. Territory, resources, slaves if you want them. Whatever you ask, we will give. We do not want slaves, Tanaka said. There was something cold in her voice. We have never wanted slaves. We have never wanted territory or resources. Do you know what we wanted? The Concorde fleet waited. We wanted to be treated like beings, Tanaka continued. We wanted to be seen as something more than tools. We wanted you to say thank you when we saved your lives. We wanted you to say sorry when we died for you. That was all. Just basic decency. Just basic respect. We are sorry, 1,000 voices said at once. We are so sorry. We did not understand. We did not see. Please forgive us. Tanaka closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they were wet. I spent 60 years fighting for you, she said. I watched my friends die. I ordered good people to their deaths. And when I asked for recognition, I was told that human losses were acceptable. She paused. Do you know how that felt? Do you have any idea? Silence. 3 centuries of service. Tanaka continued. 3 centuries of blood and sacrifice. And when it was over, we had nothing. No gratitude, no respect. Just more demands for us to die. We were wrong, the Concorde fleet responded. We were blind and foolish and cruel. We see that now. Please, give us a chance to make it right. Tanaka shook her head slowly. You are not sorry because you understand what you did. You are sorry because you are afraid. You need us to save you again? That is the only reason you are here. That is not true, someone protested. It is true, Tanaka said. If the swarm had not come, you would still be laughing at us. You would still be calling us primitive apes. You would still be treating us like disposable soldiers. The fleet had no answer for this, because they knew she was right. Fear is not the same as respect, Tanaka said. Fear is not the same as understanding. You fear us now because you need us. But need is not love. Need is not friendship. Need is just desperation wearing a mask. She looked at the fleet for a long moment. 12,000 ships full of terrified beings who had finally realized how small they were in a hostile universe. I cannot save you, she said finally. Even if I wanted to, I cannot. My people have chosen peace. They have chosen to live their own lives, free from the burden of protecting those who despise them. I have no army to offer you. I have no weapons to share. Then we are lost, the fleet whispered. Perhaps, Tanaka said, or perhaps you will find your own strength. Perhaps you will learn to fight for yourselves. Perhaps you will discover that courage is not something only humans have. She paused. But I will tell you this. Humanity has not forgotten what it means to be kind. We will not attack you. We will not take advantage of your weakness. And if any of you survive what is coming, you may come to us again. Not as beggars, not as enemies, but as equals who have earned their place through struggle and sacrifice. Her ship began to turn back toward human space. Wait, someone called out. What about our children? What about the innocent ones who never did anything wrong? Tanaka stopped. For a long moment she did not move. Send them to us, she said quietly. The children, the ones who are too young to have learned hatred. We will take them. We will raise them. They will grow up knowing that they are valued. It was not much. It was not salvation. But it was something. The platforms closed behind her ship. The wall of weapons reformed. And the Concorde fleet drifted in space, alone with their fear and their regret. Behind them, the stars were going dark one by one. 8 years after humanity closed its borders, the galaxy fell silent. The Vectari swarm had consumed everything in the core systems. The great civilizations that had ruled for 10,000 years were gone. Their crystal towers were shattered. Their floating cities had crashed to the ground. Their art, their music, their philosophy, all lost forever. The null zones continued their slow expansion through dead systems. They swallowed worlds that no one lived on anymore. There was no one left to notice. The harvesters walked through the graveyard of civilization. They collected samples from empty ruins. They found no living beings to experiment on. After a while, they went back to sleep. There was nothing left for them to do. Only the edges of the galaxy still held life. Small pockets of survivors hid on remote moons and forgotten asteroids. They lived in fear, never staying in one place too long. They had learned that the swarm would eventually find them if they did, and behind its wall of weapons, humanity continued to exist. The first alien children arrived 3 years after Tanaka's offer. They came in small ships, sent by parents who knew they would never see them again. Some were infants, some were old enough to understand what was happening. All of them were alone. Humanity took them in. It was not easy at first. The children spoke different languages. They had different bodies, different needs, different ways of thinking. Some of them were afraid of humans. They had grown up hearing stories about the violent apes who only knew how to fight. But children are adaptable. They learn, they grow, they forget old fears and make new friends. Within a generation, the alien children had become part of human society. They went to human schools, they played with human children, they learned human languages and human customs. Some of them grew up to marry humans. Their children were something new, not quite human, not quite alien, but something in between. As the years passed, more survivors made their way to the human border. Not all of them were turned away anymore. Humanity had begun to open small doors in its great wall. Those who came in peace were given a chance to prove themselves. The survivors brought stories with them. They told of worlds they had lost and people they had loved. They told of the arrogance that had doomed their civilizations. And they told of humanity, the species they had mocked, the species they had used, the species that had warned them and been ignored. These stories spread through the refugee communities. They were told to children at bedtime. They were written in books and recorded in songs. They became legends. In these legends, humanity was not a species of violent apes. They were guardians who had protected the galaxy without asking for payment. They were warriors who had died by the millions for beings who despised them. They were the last light in a universe going dark. The survivors taught their children to be grateful. They taught them that strength without kindness was worthless. They taught them that the greatest crime was to take someone's sacrifice for granted. 50 years after the fall, the galaxy began to heal. The swarm, having consumed everything it could reach, grew quiet. Without new food sources, it began to shrink. Some of the creatures died. Others went into hibernation. The great tide of destruction slowly pulled back. The null zones stopped expanding. No one knew why. Perhaps they had simply run out of energy. Perhaps the universe itself had found a way to heal the wounds in reality. Whatever the reason, the boundaries stabilized. In the Council of New Earth, human leaders debated what to do next. "The galaxy is empty now," said one council member. "We could claim it all for ourselves. We could build an empire that spans the stars." "We could," another agreed. "But should we? We closed our borders to protect ourselves from a galaxy that hated us. Now that galaxy is gone. The beings who survive are different. They have learned humility. They have learned respect." "How do we know they have truly changed?" asked a skeptic. "How do we know they will not go back to their old ways once they feel safe again?" The debate went on for months. There were strong opinions on both sides. Some humans still remembered the centuries of insults and wanted nothing to do with aliens ever again. Others believed that holding grudges forever was just as bad as the original crime. In the end, the decision was made by the youngest generation. The children who had grown up in peace, who had never known war, who had played with alien friends and eaten alien food. They did not understand the old hatreds. They only knew that there were beings outside their borders who needed help. "We are not our ancestors," a young woman said at the final vote. "They had every right to close the borders. They had every right to walk away. But we have the right to choose something different. We can be the generation that opens the doors again." The vote was close, but in the end, humanity chose hope. The walls came down slowly. Not all at once. That would have been foolish. But piece by piece, the great barrier that had protected humanity for half a century began to open. Ships went out into the empty galaxy. Human ships, crewed by humans and the alien children they had raised. They found survivors on scattered worlds and offered them a choice. "Come with us. Join us. Help us rebuild." Many accepted. Some refused, too afraid or too proud to accept human help. But those who came found something they had not expected. They found a society that judged them by their actions, not their species. They found a place where the old hierarchies meant nothing. They found a home. 100 years after the fall, a new civilization began to rise from the ashes. It was not the old Galactic Concord. That institution was dead and no one mourned it. The new civilization had no high speakers or founding races. It had no sanctions or propaganda or casual cruelty. It was something new, built by beings who had learned the hard way what happened when they took each other for granted. At the center of this new civilization was a simple principle, taught in every school and repeated in every home. It was written above the doors of government buildings and carved into monuments on 1,000 worlds. Gratitude is the foundation of civilization. Remember those who sacrifice for you. Honor those who protect you. Never let kindness go unrewarded. In the parks of New Earth, old men and women sat on benches and watched children play. Some of those children were human, some were not. All of them were citizens of the same civilization, heirs to the same hard lessons. Admiral Yuki Tanaka had died decades ago, but her words lived on in the history books. Fear is not the same as respect, she had said, and she had been right. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity, not because they feared human weapons or human soldiers, but because they had seen what happened when humanity's kindness was exhausted. They had watched their own civilizations burn because they had not appreciated what they had. Now they appreciated it. Now they understood. And in the quiet spaces between stars where the ruins of the old civilization still drifted, the survivors told stories to their children. They spoke of arrogance and punishment, of loss and redemption, of a species called humanity that had walked away from a galaxy that did not deserve them. But they came back, the children would say. Why did they come back? And the elders would smile and give the only answer that mattered. Because that is who they are. They fight when they must. They walk away when they must. But in the end, they always choose to hope. That is what makes them human. Outside the windows, the stars burned bright in a healing galaxy. And for the first time in a very long time, the future did not seem quite so dark.